Yes. Can I tell you a piece of trivia about the year 1809?
Okay.
Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln were both born on February 15th, 1809.
Really?
Their total was 1095, the start of the Crusades, and 1233 was the beginning of the Inquisition. The first Inquisition wasn't the Spanish Inquisition, it was dealing with the Albigensian heretics, and dealing rather harshly with them, I might say. Your total expressed using powers of 2, 4,257.
Very nice.
7 to the 4th minus 2 to the 5th, 2,401 minus 32, 2,369. Just an arithmetician. I can't solve problems, I can only calculate fast.
Wow.
Or maybe that's the definition of an idiot savant.
Oh, I don't think so.
My parents thought so. You know how they say you should file away your income tax or something. But I know that if I filed my income tax, I would forget where the filing cabinet is. Near the computer, there's little things on the wall, and all that stuff is sort of like current information that I should know. I think that if things are out in the open, I just have to weed them out. In the kitchen, that's a system that works for me. I know when I changed my sheet. I know when I changed the pillowcase. I know the last time I looked. The things that you don't wash that often, like your blue jeans. And I have a rule of thumb that when I think about anything, I always stop what I'm doing and I make the entries. And it keeps me from total chaos. Hello.
Hi, this is Magdalena.
Oh, hello, Magdalena.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Nice to hear from you.
Thank you. I just called the Ministry of Health. I haven't received any reply yet. And I actually got a live person on the phone. She said your application has to be reviewed by an external expert, so that's why it's taking so long. Your case is a little bit more complicated than an average, treatment request, so I'm not surprised.
I hope they know that compared, I think, to the typical person with hepatitis C, I lead an extremely healthy...
For them, that doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter.
Because you've had other treatments and you did well with them, that's better than this saying, oh, this person has a good lifestyle, So.
In the mid-30s, Miriam and Julius Teitel came to Canada with their family. Dad proposed shortly after he met her, and he was under time pressure because he was about to go off to fight in World War II. She waited for him for 5 years, and they got married in 1946. I was born in 1952, the second of 3 brothers. My father had a keen interest in geography, kind of an encyclopedic knowledge of it. But unfortunately, it wasn't close to him. Like literally, we didn't spend much time together. He worked out of town, and then he got a job working nights so that we only saw him on the weekends. Mom taught kindergarten at a Hebrew school for many years, and I was one of her pupils. Mom, who was always kvelling, like gushing over me, and all her friends being extremely impressed, like the little genius. You know, teenage years are the time you start making your own decisions, and I wasn't doing that. So, Bukas will be my last day for a while. I remember I told you why.
For how long again?
Until I think the middle of February. I'm going to have a winter vacation at home.
Nice. Nice one.
I was socially awkward. I was just doing my homework and getting good marks. I was trying to live up to my mother's image of me as like the smartest kid on the planet. My parents decided that I should be an architect because I was equally good at the artsy stuff and the math science stuff, but I didn't feel inside like that's what I really, really wanted. The worst thing that could happen to me was winning that big scholarship. That scholarship was hanging over me, and my parents were holding it over me like a cudgel, like your family died in the Holocaust and what, you're going to throw away money? What people thought of me meant everything. My marks plummeted from the highest to the lowest. The pressure just overwhelmed me, and I attempted suicide, took a whole bunch of pills. None of us, myself included, we couldn't get out of this mindset of like I was the super student and I was going to become really successful. I not only derailed, I went over a bridge and landed in a lake or something. My parents were really hoping that I would go back to university, and when I was a little more independent, I cut them off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I had dropped out of architecture school, kind of dropped out of everything. I lived in dilapidated rooming houses and would wander the streets. I felt connected to the bleakness, the grayness of winter, the rundown neighborhoods, the back alleyways with the black snow. I was caught in a loop of guilt-ridden thoughts. Why am I not in university? Why am I doing this to myself? Why am I so lonely? Why am I so miserable? When I was having a good day, I was having a great day because there were no restrictions. There was nothing weighing me down, and sometimes my spirit would just soar.
And out, and in, and out, in. And deep breath in, and out, and in again, and out. Your first liver biopsy that you had actually showed very mild scarring in the liver, but with subsequent years that scarring progressed, and we know that as the scarring progresses, in general that leads to poor responses to treatment. So it's not so surprising that this happened, that you had this fairly good response on treatment and then relapsed, and then later as the damage in the liver progressed that the response worsened. What we most recently found out, unfortunately, is that the virus did rebound after we stopped the treatment. Mm-hmm. So what happened is the virus went down, it was undetectable throughout the treatment, and it came back afterwards. And that's important because it may mean that the only problem was that we didn't treat you long enough. Maybe instead of, we don't know if you got 3 or 4 months, but maybe rather than even 4 months, maybe with more advanced liver damage like you have, maybe you need to be treated.
The longest I'd ever lived anywhere was probably 5 months. In April '77, I finally, for the first time, moved to a place where I ended up staying. And my life started to change. I got a job in Kensington Market. The Holocaust survivor boss was a character. I liked being behind the counter and talking to people. My self-image was no longer, I'm a mental patient. On July 2nd, 1984, I got hired as a cashier. That was the beginning of working in health food stores. The very first time that I correlated the customer's total to a fact just came out of my mouth. 343, Don Mattingly's batting average for the 1984 Yankees. The numbers were 50% historical dates, 30% Guinness Book records or general trivia, and 20% baseball facts. It was just relying on the facts that were already in my head. Within a year, I found myself doing some research because I wanted to have a fact for every number.
So you just collect this all in your mind and retain it.
But keep in mind that 12 years on the job, even though my repertoire goes up past 2,000, the numbers do come up again and again, and it reinforces my memory.
So if anybody ever comes by with a $1,000 bill on a loaf of bread, you're stumped.
Yeah, that's over $20. I prefer to be on the express cash, the lower numbers.
What, my good man, are you doing as a cashier when you have this ability that you could be working like at the Enrico Fermi lab in Chicago?
Having lots and lots of fun and meeting lots of nice regular customers.
The thought crossed my mind, maybe I can be an entertainer, maybe someone will pay me for doing this, but it didn't appeal to me enough. My parents were aware that I was doing something I was at least enjoying. When they gave up their heroic efforts to redirect me towards where I had originally been headed, in my early life, relations began to improve. The last 6 months of my father's life were different. I really wanted to communicate with him on his terms. The last visit, we had a very interesting conversation about history. Ancient Sparta. There's a monument to the 300 Spartan soldiers who fought to the last man at Thermopylae. And my father said, I can't remember that inscription, but there's this beautiful English translation, and I can't recall it now. And I said, I can recall it. Go, passing stranger, and to the Spartans tell that here, obedient to their laws, we fell. You look sort of intelligent. 7 to the 4th minus 11 squares, 2,401 minus 121, 2280. But that is not the final total.